So we're going to take you through your entire
Oh
career.
my gosh.
We did a mini version of this the other day, so it's kind of.
Mm.
Now you started. Your parents, your father,
Mm.
was on the carnival circuit. I mean,
Yeah.
very unusual. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I guess you would call my father a showman, and perhaps that's why I developed my love of, acting and just wanting to entertain people. We traveled with the carnival circuit mostly through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Virginia. And from the time could remember, I was 2 years old till I was about 16, and he had many different games. I had a basketball joint that was my game, my personal game, and I could make every single basket every single time because the regulation size of the basket was not what we had. We had a smaller basket, so I would practice that. My father had the Crazy Ball birthday game. It was a game that he invented. It was a 12-sided block and had every month on it, and you would throw it into sort of a big bin in the middle of this arena. And on the outside of it was all the different months. So you would take a quarter, 50 cents or a dollar, whatever it was, and you would bet, okay, somebody's going to throw in the ball, and if it lands on your month, you're going to win. Well, to get people to encourage them to come into our game and actually give us money, he was really good at telling stories and jokes and just entreating people to come in and spend their money at his game. And I used to watch him in wonderment because he was so good at it. And
Sounds like a fun
yeah,
upbringing,
it was
childhood.
it was a fun way to grow up. Yeah, just when you go to a carnival or a fair, you see that it usually opens from maybe 11 o'clock in the morning till midnight. And really, during that time, from when I was a very small child, I was able to roam the carnival's grounds on my own. And there are many different people that were traveling with the carnival. A lot of families, but a lot of kind of transient and more fringe type people that kind of maybe felt displaced by society and felt more comfortable traveling with a fair. So, my best friend was the bearded lady and the person who had the two-headed cow and the people who had the baby in the jar and the formaldehyde, and the ride boys who would let me, ride the rides all day long, and the fried bread dough sellers and people like that. So it was a real nice community. And really, we were there to entertain people so that they would spend money. It's really not any different than what I'm doing now.
And that's where it all started. You had
Probably.
early ambitions to be an actress from that, or
No, just to entertain people and make them feel like they wanted to have fun. And, I even tried to use some of my father's jokes and tried to, call people in as they were walking by to spend money at my basketball joint. So, yes, I think from an early age it probably initially came from him.
so? Did you went to school, or you had to sort of keep
Sure.
moving around, and
Yeah.
go to different places?
Well,
or-
that was just in the summer. In America, it was the warm winter months. We had in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Virginia. I mostly grew up in New York and Vermont, but it was during the summer months in those other states that we would travel. And in the winter months, I would go to school, and my father would continue on and go down to Georgia and Florida and places like that where it was continually warm. And he would be on the road for a longer period of time. But then we had 5 children in our family. I'm the youngest. My mother would take us back home, and we would all go to school. But I started acting, I think, when I was in 9th grade. My first play was Run, Robber, Run. And I was hooked from that moment. And then when I was in high school, I did high school plays. And then, yes, I did go to college for theater.
Were your parents supportive of this career option, because they were in that particular entertainment arena anyway?
No, I don't think they really understood it. When I told my mother at 11 years old that I wanted to be an actress, she said, "That's great. Now go take some typing lessons," because she wanted me to have something to fall back on. I would say that to anybody today, actually, making movies in this day and age too, because it's very hard to make money off of your craft today. But I was fortunate enough in the early years after going to college and moving to Los Angeles to work on a lot of different soap operas. And I think really even more than doing some of the movies I did, some of the early movies I got paid better for than I'm getting paid today, really. The budgets were a little bit bigger then. But what sustained me was 6 years on The Young and the Restless, and 2 years on The Bold and the Beautiful, and a couple of years on Days of Our Lives and some other shows. Those were the places that I made money, and that actually sustained me through the years of being able to do some movies, in between time.
Was that a particular discipline to work on soaps, especially daytime soaps? And is that where you learn practically everything?
Well, I feel like I learned a lot when I was in college because, I did scene study and stage combat, and I even learned how to drape and draft patterns and make costumes. I was the property mistress for a few shows. I was a scene painter. I did direct some of my own short plays in college, but there is a different discipline for working on a soap opera. It's very quick. It's quicker than anything I've ever experienced because if you're in a heavy storyline, you could get up to 40 pages of dialogue a day. You'll get your script a week in advance, but if you're in a heavy storyline, then you're going to be working 5 days a week for a few weeks. There's no way that you can learn your lines a week in advance if you have that much dialogue. So you have to kind of trust yourself that you have to learn it the night before. But after a while, you become accustomed to your character, working with the other actors. Actually, in soap operas, they don't like you to ad-lib. They really like you to stick to the script because it's 3 cameras, and they know specifically where they're going to be cutting. They cut the whole hour program while they're shooting it. So they don't want you to deviate from anything. They want you to cross on the line that you did in rehearsal and stop and turn on the line that you did while you were working it out with the camera people. So you had to be, you just had to remember. I mean, it's a muscle, the memory, like anything else. And the more you work it, the better you get. So I don't think I was quite good in my early career in soap operas. I did Days of Our Lives. That was my first job on television. And I did that for about 9 months. And I really don't think I was very good on that show. I don't know how I lasted as long as I did. They let me stay longer than I think they should have. And then finally, I think after sort of watching myself on that show and watching tapes of it, I learned that I had to, bring the acting kind of down a little bit. I studied theater, and soap operas have a little melodramatic aspect to them, and the acting is somewhat bigger, but then, in film, it's a lot smaller. So I think the aperture through which the energy flows is different, even though the energy could be the same inside. So for everything that I did, I've noticed that I've had to bring it down and down and down over the course of many years. And of course now we have a lot of mumblecore movies and everybody's just trying to out-relax one another. So how relaxed can you be in the scene? I can be more relaxed than you, yeah. You can hardly hear people talking now in movies.
So it seems so surprising then that you went into horror. It was such a swerve. I mean, was it just like another job? The
Yes.
first time we saw you saw in the reel. I mean, it was Brian De Palma's Body Double. I mean, and then Re-Animator came after that. But were you making a conscious effort to move into the genre, or was it just another job?
Well, first of all, I want to say about the Brian De Palma part in Body Double. My part was much larger when I auditioned and I got the part. I actually had lines in the movie.
All right.
The night before we shot, I got a call. All of your lines have been cut, and you only have that one scene with Craig Wasson. But it's a big scene, and it impacts the major character of the movie, and it makes him make all the decisions after he sees you in bed with this other guy. So we really want you to do it. And I thought to myself, well, surely it's going to lead to other things with Brian De Palma. So I should just do it. I did it, but it never did. Years later, I was in a restaurant and I was eating lunch, and a guy came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked up and it was Brian De Palma. And I told him that story, and he said, okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'll use you in something else. He still never asked me. Anyway, yes.
Amazing. So how did Re-Animator actually happen? Tell me. Did you know Stuart Gordon?
No, I didn't know him at all.
From your theatre line?
Not at all. I mean, really, after I graduated college, I moved to New York, and I did a couple of Shakespeare plays at the American Theatre of Actors. I played Cordelia in King Lear, and then I did some other workshop things. And then very soon after that, I moved to Los Angeles. And Stuart was big in the theater, in the organic theater program in Chicago. And this was his first movie. When he came out to Los Angeles and he got the money to do it, he had cast a different girl in the role of Meg. And her mother read the script and decided that she couldn't let her 21 or 22-year-old darling be in a movie like this. It was quite, exploitive and, dark comedy, and she just didn't want her to do it. So the girl turned the role down. Jeffrey and Bruce both had the part, and I was called in 2 weeks later on another casting call. I wasn't in on the first one. And then I read with those guys, and, for whatever reason, they decided that I could play the part, and so I did. And I wasn't particularly a fan of horror movies. I grew up watching The Outer Limits, The Twilight Zone, things like that, Dark Shadows. I loved those shows, but I didn't think in my mind, oh, I'm going to have a career in horror, I did this fun movie, and people seemed to really like it, and I loved working with the guys that I worked with. It was great, good fun, 18 or 19 days, and right before Christmas, we just had a lovely time, and I just thought that was it. And then, then I got Shopping Mall, and I don't even know why Jim Wynorski cast me. I don't even know if he saw me in Re-Animator or knew of me. Maybe the casting director called me in because they had heard of my name.
Is it because you didn't know that much about horror at the time? Because at that time, most of us who were watching it realised where it was going. It was actually getting quite extreme. And when you must have... Did you read the script and you thought...
More extreme than the torture porn years?
Yeah, that was
know.
later, but back then, Re-Animator was really edgy stuff.
I guess so. I didn't know that it was edgy.
Exactly.
To be honest with you, I didn't know. I didn't know that it was edgy. I mean, I thought it was funny and fun, but I didn't know that it was completely extreme. But potentially because I grew up, not in, a white lace background with a white picket fence. I was a carny girl. Maybe I was a little bit more open to being in a movie like that. It didn't affect me reading it the same way that it did this other girl that turned the role down. And I certainly didn't give it to my mother to tell me, at how old was I? I don't know. You guys tell me. Maybe I was 25 at the time that I got that part. I wasn't going to ask my mother if I could do it. I mean, I read it and thought it was cool, and I said, it's a job. They were going to pay me to act. So, yes, I said yes. I didn't know that it was extreme. And I didn't know how extreme it was, even in that scene that everybody talks about, until people started talking about it in the reviews. Right. Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert gave us all wonderful reviews, and everybody talked about that scene, and they're still talking about that scene today.
Can you watch it again? What do you
I can't watch it with all of you watching me watch it.
Okay.
But I can watch it myself.
Okay.
I've seen it so many times now. Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Did you have a feeling while you were making it, it was going to be a classic?
No.
Was there any sort of vibe of that?
Gosh, no, not at all. Doesn't everybody say that? I mean, does anybody actually do a movie and they say, this is going to be the greatest piece of art that the world has ever seen? Does anybody really think that? Unless you're Spielberg or Kubrick or somebody like that. No. I mean, this was Stuart's first movie. He didn't really understand camera angles at that point. We had Mac Ahlberg, God rest his soul, who was, very adept at working with Stuart and explaining to him, well, we're going to turn the camera around. And then Stuart would say, well, what does that mean exactly? And he really worked with him. And they had a wonderful partnership. Potentially, the movie worked for us because I think it was a good script. And I think it was fun. And I guess, yes, now I realize how outrageous it was. But everybody in the movie had a background in theater. Jeffrey, of course, had done a lot of things at San Diego Rep, and Bruce had come from a theater background. I had as well. And we also had a little bit of an advantage back then that some of the filmmakers that I've worked with on the movies recently in 2015, we didn't have this advantage. We rehearsed Re-Animator for 3 weeks beforehand. Nobody paid me for that. Nobody has to pay me for that today. I'll do it for nothing. I would rather get together with you in your living room and work out the scene with you and talk about it and work on it and, really discuss it and analyze it and have fun with it and get to know you before we shoot the scene. So there was really no question to us when Stuart said, "Okay, we're going to rehearse. We're going to start shooting in 3 weeks. Who has the biggest living room?" And I think I said I did, because by then I had gotten to know the guys and they all lived in apartments and I had a little house at the time that I was renting. And so they all came over and we worked on every scene, maybe 20, 30 times. I mean, it was exhausting, but I think, having that background really helped us. And it was a magical thing that happened. Maybe the right actors, the right director, the right script, the sensibility at the time. I really think the movie is probably iconic because of the way Jeffrey Combs played the character. I mean, I don't think that's a mystery. So I think magic happens sometimes, and I'm so thankful that it happened to me.
I mean, there was always talk about them doing House of Re-Animator. Do you remember? And that was going to be
Yeah.
the next sequel
Right.
after Beyond Re-Animator. I mean, it's a shame. Do you regret that didn't happen and you would have liked to have continued?
No, I don't. I don't really think about it. I mean, people say we could still do it potentially, but I think that ship sailed maybe.
Ah.
I mean, I think it should have been done many years ago.
Sure. So Re-Animator comes out, and then you start another, as you said, Chopping Mall. You've got
Yeah.
all these movies coming along. I mean, was it just a case of you were the go-to girl, really?
No, I wasn't the go-to girl because there were so many other people.
Yes,
There was,
but
Amanda Weiss, Heather Langenkamp. I mean, there's a lot of other young women who were doing horror movies. In fact, I'll tell you guys a little secret. What's your favorite Bernard Rose movie?
Candyman.
I auditioned for that.
Right.
He might not even remember that. I don't know if he remembers that. I haven't seen him. I know he's been here this weekend, but I auditioned for that and I didn't get that part because, she was also another young lady that was on the circuit with me, as was Kelly Maroney and, many other girls. So there was a lot of us around. And I think after Chopping Mall, I did another soap opera. And then I came back to From Beyond, a little bit later, or maybe not. I don't know. It sort of all runs together now. But, after Stuart had a lot of success with Re-Animator and got so many accolades, and we made that movie for a very low budget, he got something like 10 times the budget to do From Beyond. And then he really gave me a wonderful gift in Catherine McMichaels and giving me a really wonderful role that was much more multidimensional than Meg from Re-Animator. I got to do so many things with the role of Catherine. And I think probably from that role, that really springboarded me into other things as well.
I mean, did you mind, or do you mind being called a Scream Queen? I mean, is it something that you consider a bit iffy, or you don't mind that?
I don't really care, but I'm a very easygoing person. So, if somebody calls me a Scream Queen, that's fine, as long as it's not derogatory. I mean, it depends on who's saying it. I mean, some people say, "Ooh, Scream Queen, wonderful," and other people think of it in a derogatory term and say, "Oh, they're just a Scream Queen, they can't act." There's a lot of, it's a very loose term now, isn't it? A lot of people are considered Scream Queens, but there's some wonderful women that I'm also in the company of who are called that. So I'll take it.
And then sort of you moved through, and there was a couple of other horror movies, Castle Freak again. You went to Italy to do that, Dino Chita. I went to that place once. I thought it was an amazing setup. I loved it. And I mean, so that was a great time for the Charles Band organisation. And then it sort of all went sort of horribly wrong, really, didn't it? I mean,
Well, probably because, back in the 80s, we had a lot of movies that were going to videotape, and we needed product, right? And it was an explosion, overseas of movies, being sold, and distributed all across the world. And then there was a boom for that, and there was a lot of people that were at the forefront of that movement, and Charles Band was one of those. And then all of a sudden, there wasn't that much call for it anymore, and things were being shown on television, and you didn't need videotape. And then it changed to DVD, and now we have, digital. So Charles keeps reinventing himself. He's had numerous companies since the Empire days, and he always seems to be able to put out products that people will buy. and create wonderful little characters and wonderful little posters. So, I think he's an amazing showman and an amazing manufacturer of products that people want to see and watch.
So your first wave of horror movies then comes to an end. Precisely why? Was it because of the family you wanted to?
No, because I didn't have a family at the time. I think it was just because I had gotten older, and there weren't as many roles for me. I was also doing, I had a few commercials here and there, some episodic TV. I did a movie of the week with John Ritter and Penny Marshall. Little nuggets of things like that would happen. But there's a lot of actors and actresses in Hollywood. So, if you worked maybe 3 or 4 times in a year, you were having a good career. But it was hard to sustain that. At one point when I got on the show, The Young and the Restless, they asked me to stay on for 3 or 4 months when I initially got there. And then they liked the character that they decided to write her a little bit longer. And they said, would you stay for another year? And I said, absolutely, put some money in the bank. And then after a year, they said, we want to sign you for a contract for 3 years. And I think at that time I was like 27 or 28. And I thought, wow, this is the age where if I say yes, I'm going to have some job security. If I say no, I may have the chance at something greater. And I wanted to make money and I wanted to be sensible. And so I took the job. And then they asked me to stay another few years. And I wound up being on that show as a regular character for 6 years. And it was a great, amazing character. She was psychotic and ill, and she had, spells, and she would talk to herself and talk to other people. And she had a TV show. So it was quite exciting. And, I was able to put some money in the bank. And I don't regret that at all. When that show ended, I did another soap opera for a couple of years. I think that was The Bold and the Beautiful. And then I moved to New York after not going through 2 pilot seasons and not really getting another, chance at a TV show. I did have a few pilots that I did that never went to series. And then somebody called me and asked me to do Guiding Light in New York. And so I went to New York and I did that for a couple of years. And then after that, that was kind of it. Then I felt like, I think I was about 37 or so, and at that point I wasn't really working that much. And I really thought to myself, okay, I'm going to have to do something else to make a living. The soap operas were kind of, dying off a little bit. That entertainment wasn't something that people wanted to see as much. A lot of the shows were being canceled. I wasn't getting the auditions or the roles, for a 38-year-old woman. They just weren't there. So I thought, well, maybe I'll become a chef because I love to cook. Or maybe I'll become a gardener because I love to do that. And just around the time that I was thinking about that, I was also thinking, I'm not married and I don't have a family. And I had one failed marriage from the camera operator from Re-Animator and From Beyond, who was a lovely guy, but that didn't work out. And so I thought I'd really like to concentrate on making a relationship work. And there was maybe something that went off in my brain. Very soon after that, I met my husband, who I'm married to today, and I put a lot of energy into my relationship with him and told him I was thinking about, maybe becoming a chef or going back to school. And right around the time that we were talking about getting married, he got transferred with his company to move up to San Francisco from Los Angeles. So he said, I want to take you up there. I want to get married. Let's go up there and, we'll start a family right now, because I was getting older. So unhesitatingly, I said absolutely, because that was something missing from my life. And I'd really fallen in love, and I wanted to be with my husband, Bob. So we moved up to San Francisco, and he looked at me and I got pregnant. Then I had one baby, and he looked at me again, and I got pregnant again. So I got that out of the way. And then I had my children, and it was really in 2011 that I was on a treadmill in Tahoe, California, and we were skiing, that I got a text from my agent, and he said, some people want to hire you for this movie. It's called You're Next, and you need to be in Columbia, Missouri in 10 days. And I thought, what? Who is this from? Who is this person? My agent hadn't talked to me in 6 years. And he still had my number. And he hadn't dropped me, you know. This man is named Mike Eisenstadt. And he's been my agent for a number of years. And is a lovely person. And I call him a dear friend of mine. He is a lover of horror movies. And initially, he signed me many years before when I was on a soap opera because he loved Re-Animator so much. And I think he was just laying in wait, thinking, ooh, something might happen with her. Anyway, I got the call, and I read the script on my iPhone in Tahoe because I didn't have a computer with me, and I had to make a decision if I was going to go in 10 days to Missouri to do this part. So I read You're Next, and I got this whole profile from Keith Calder about his company, what they had done before, his soon-to-be wife, Jessica Wu, what she had done, what they've been involved with. He was like, you know, in Variety a number of years ago as one of the 10 producers to watch in Hollywood. And, you know, I got a private letter from Simon Barrett talking about how much he wanted me for the role. And you know, I didn't understand where this all came from. They had been at Fantastic Fest and had met Stuart Gordon, I think it was like 2009 or 2010, when they were showing A Horrible Way to Die. And a light bulb went off when he saw Stuart, and he said, oh, I'm doing this movie. I wrote it. It's called You're Next, and we want either, you know, a somewhat known name for the mother or the father role. Do you think Barbara Crampton would do it? This is the story I heard later. And Stuart said, oh, no, she's retired. She's not, you know, she's married and she lives up north. Well, he took it upon himself anyway just to see, you know, Simon Barrett did. And so he was the one that called my agent and, you know, got the ball rolling. And I read the script and I thought, this looks like a fun movie. They're legitimate young filmmakers. I don't really know any of their movies. I hadn't been watching horror movies for a very long time. But I thought, this will be fun. You know, I've been a mom for a number of years now, and I'm just going to go off for 11 days and do this little movie, this little part in this little movie, and it'll be just a fun little challenge, and I'll go back to raising my family. So I went and hung out with Ty West and Joe Swanberg and Adam and Simon and, you know, A.J. Bowen, Amy Simons, all these amazing, collaborative, interesting, creative people who were able to riff off one another in amazing ways, just acting, but also we would be in the middle of a scene and Ty West would suggest something to me or to somebody else to do, and then Simon would come in and say, do you like that line, Barbara? Because we could change it. Do you want to say something else? And sometimes Adam would take the camera from our DP because he just saw something in me or somebody else, and he would say, oh my God, I want to capture that. And he would just, you know, start filming something, and you weren't even really working. It was really exciting. I can't tell you how great it was to work on that set with those people. And so then, you know, the movie went on to be premiered at the Toronto Film Festival and win like the Audience Award. And it was a bidding war with many different people. And Lionsgate bought it. Of course, then they put it on a shelf for 2 years because they had acquired Summit Entertainment, and so there was a restructuring. They had, instead of 10 titles to put out, now they had 30. So they put us on a shelf. And that's a whole nother story. But then, you know, a couple of years later, they found the right target date for us, and then they put the movie out, and, you know, it was all gangbusters from there. And I think many of these filmmakers that have cast me in the movies recently in Sunchoke and Road Games, and We Were Still Here, really was because I worked on You're Next, and because it became somewhat of a hit. You know, it could have been Amanda Weiss that was on, you know, on deck for that, or it could have been my very good friend Kelly Maroney. What if it had been one of them? They would be sitting here in front of you today. But thank God it was me. So here I am with
And,
you.
and you've embraced it again.
I have embraced. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that I didn't think I was coming back, but I did, and then I realized how much I loved it.
Sure. And you're moving now, as you say, into sort of production areas. I mean, it isn't that you just want to act anymore. You actually want to help the people.
I want to help the people. That's the important aspect of it, because I was saying last night to somebody, I'm kind of a reluctant producer. I don't mean to be a producer. It's just that, my friend Jackson Stewart, who was an intern for Stuart Gordon for many years, who I've seen grow up through the business, do many shorts, work on the TV show Supernatural. I even was in a couple of his shorts. He did a TV movie. I just think he was ready. And we've been quite good friends for the past few years, and he sent me this script, and he had acquired 80 to 85% of the financing for the movie. And at the last minute, he sent it to me, and he said, I need you to read this. I've been asking you for a couple of months to read Beyond the Gates. Would you please read it? I need your help. And I read it, and I thought it was a wonderful script. And he cast the major people that we have in the movie, Bria Grant and Graham Skipper and Chase Williamson. And he got most of the money, and he got Amanda Mortimer, this wonderful new producer that's come on the scene in the past few years, to work on it. And I believe in him so much that I said, right after reading it, I called him up and I said, how much money do you need, and what kind of help do you need, and I'll give it to you. So now I'm involved with that movie. And another friend of mine, Evan Dixon, has been a writer for many years and wrote an amazing screenplay, and it was on the Blacklist last year, one of the best unproduced horror scripts of that year, 2014. And it's phenomenal script called The Wildness, and I've been pitching that around town, and it looks like we have a bite on it. And there's nothing in that movie for me acting wise. I want to help him because the script is so good. So I think I'm at a place right now in my career where if I can help you, or if I like your project, if I like the people I'm working with, that'll be enough impetus for me to say yes.
I think most people who read your piece in the FrightFest program realise that you've actually got a real grasp on the way the industry is now and how it's changed, and that's what you really do like. I mean, I can see that it's more of an involvement for you now, and, and that's the way the business has changed since when you did Re-Animator, I think. And it's really an exciting time, I think for independence.
So too. Yeah.
So it's really quite good. I mean, many of you might have remembered meeting Jackson Stewart when he came with Paul Stewart to Glasgow. I just don't know if you remember. When Paul came with Grace, Jackson was the guy he brought with him to bring to, and I mean, that's when I met him. And when he came to London, we hung out, and I really liked him. I knew he was going to go somewhere.
He's very talented.
I really liked him. And of course, Abner gave you an executive producer credit on Road Games as well.
Thank you.
So that must be somehow. So that's it now, Barbara. So you're back. I mean, you're not going to go away again. This is going to be it. You're going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to pick and choose a little bit because I can do that, and I'm still taking care of my family. But I feel like I have a balance now of being able to, work when I'm able to, or when I can, or when something moves me, and then also be with my children and my husband when they need me.
Did your husband know your then future husband know about your career? I mean, was he familiar with what you were doing?
No, not really. He's so not in the business at all. But he likes it now, since knowing me and, kind of going to different events with me. And now he's seen everything I've ever been in. And he's quite fond of it all, actually. But, no.
You've been an absolute delight. We've loved having you here.
Thank you.
No, seriously, you've been so great. I mean,
Thank you.
Really. And I'm so pleased that you found this niche again in your career, because I think it's just great. And I know we can get some really good stuff from you over the next few years. And you can come back to FrightFest anytime you like,
Thank
darling.
you.
So
Thanks for having me.